The letter arrived on a rain-drenched morning, its envelope heavy, wax-sealed in a deep crimson that felt strangely archaic in the age of emails and texts. Elara sat at her small apartment table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee gone cold, staring at her name written in elegant script, Elara Taylor. She didn't know anyone who wrote like that. Inside, the parchment was even stranger. A law firm representing the Taylor family line informed her that she was the last living heir to an estate in the countryside, an old, sprawling Gothic manor called Blackthorn Hall. The name alone seemed lifted out of one of the novels she buried herself in late at night. She had never heard of Blackthorn Hall. She had never heard of this supposed relative, one Lady Celestine Taylor. And yet, something twisted in her chest, a tug, as though the name was a bell rung somewhere deep in her bones. Her family brushed it off when she called. "Cursed place," her uncle muttered. "Your father wanted nothing to do with it. Leave it alone." Her aunt was sharper. "Don't dig up the past, Elara. Nothing good will come of it." But for Elara, who had spent her life plagued by dreams of a faceless woman calling her name, nothing about this felt random. For as long as she could remember, she had felt incomplete, like a puzzle missing its final piece. Her relationships failed one after another, each partner leaving her with the same complaint. "You're searching for someone else even when you're looking at me." Maybe they were right. And now, an estate in her name, wrapped in whispers and shadows, called to her. The drive out to the countryside was long, winding, and wet. By the time her small car rolled to a stop at the gates of Blackthorn Hall, night had fallen, and the estate rose against the sky like something from another century. Its dark spires pierced the stormy clouds, windows glinting like watchful eyes. The iron gates creaked open with a reluctant groan. Waiting at the entrance, holding a lantern that cast his weathered face in gold, was a man in his 60s, broad-shouldered despite his years. At his side stood a young woman, her posture relaxed, her eyes fixed on Elara with unsettling intensity. "Miss Taylor," the man greeted warmly, dipping his head. "I am Arthur, caretaker of the estate, and this—" He gestured toward the young woman, who stepped forward with a grace that made Elara's stomach tighten. "Is my daughter, Celine." Celine's dark hair clung damply to her cheeks. Her lips curved into a smile that was both knowing and amused. Her eyes, God, her eyes, were the kind of deep gray that storm clouds envied. "Welcome home," Celine said softly. Elara blinked. "Home?" She almost laughed, but the words lodged in her throat. Instead, she muttered, "It's bigger than I expected." Celine's lips twitched, as though fighting back a smirk. "It has a way of overwhelming people. Don't worry, it only creaks half as much as it looks like it should." That earned a startled laugh from Elara, one that felt too loud against the brooding backdrop of the mansion. Celine's smile widened at the sound, a glint of mischief in her eyes. Inside the manor was a cathedral of shadows. Oil portraits lined the walls, their painted eyes following her, many faces bearing an eerie resemblance to her own. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something floral, lavender maybe, though Elara couldn't tell if it came from the house or from Celine, who brushed past her to light a fire in the parlor. Her presence was distracting. Every time their shoulders brushed in the narrow hallways, Elara's pulse jumped. When Celine laughed at her fumbling attempt to tug off her raincoat, the sound filled the cavernous space with warmth. Yet beneath it all, there was something else, something heavier. When Celine looked at her too long, Elara swore she felt the echo of hands she didn't remember, lips brushing hers in dreams she couldn't explain. By the time Arthur retired for the night, leaving them alone, Elara felt wound tight as a spring. Celine lingered by the fire, crouched low to stir the embers, the glow outlining the curve of her hip, the elegant line of her neck. She turned suddenly, catching Elara staring. "You'll get used to the house," Celine said, her voice smooth, teasing. "It just likes to test people first." A pause. Then, softer. "You'll get used to me too." Elara's heart gave a violent thud. She forced a laugh. You sound awfully sure of yourself. Celine tilted her head, that almost smirk returning. Let's just say I have a feeling. Their eyes locked, the fire snapping between them. For a dizzying moment, Elara swore she knew this heat, this pull. It was the same from her dreams, the same nameless hunger that had chased her through the years. She looked away too quickly, cheeks burning. Right, well, I should get some rest. As she climbed the staircase to her room, she swore she felt Celine's gaze on her back, hot and unrelenting. And that night, for the first time, the faceless woman in her dreams leaned closer, her lips brushing hers, whispering in Celine's voice, I found you. The dream began the way it always did, with footsteps echoing through endless corridors. Elara moved barefoot over stone floors, the air damp and cold against her skin. Shadows stretched long on the walls, whispering words she couldn't quite catch. At the end of the hall, a door stood ajar, golden light spilling through the crack. Her heart thudded as she pushed it open. Inside, a woman waited, always the same, her back turned, her silhouette blurred by flickering candlelight. When Elara stepped closer, the air shifted, warm and sweet, smelling faintly of lavender and smoke. This time, the woman turned, and for the first time, the faceless blur sharpened. Gray eyes, storm-dark and tender, locked on hers. Celine. You're late, Celine whispered, though her lips never moved. Her voice slid into Elara's bones. Elara tried to speak, but her throat closed. Celine touched her cheek, warm, steady. I've been waiting. The touch burned into Elara's skin, her breath catching as Celine's mouth brushed hers in a kiss that tasted both new and achingly familiar. Heat curled through her, flooding her chest, her belly, down between her thighs. And then she woke with a jolt, gasping, tangled in the heavy quilt of the manor bed. The fire in the hearth had died, only shadows lingered, but her lips still tingled as though Celine's kiss had been real. Morning came with gray light spilling through tall windows. Celine appeared at her door with a tray of coffee and fresh bread, casual in fitted jeans and a white shirt rolled at the sleeves. You survived your first night, she teased, setting the tray on the desk. Barely, Elara muttered, hiding her blush in the coffee cup. Celine leaned against the doorframe, watching her with that steady, unsettling gaze. The house likes to test newcomers. If it gave you dreams, that means it's beginning to accept you. Elara choked slightly on her sip. Dreams? She asked too quickly. Celine's mouth quirked. Don't worry, you'll get used to them. Later that day, Arthur sent them to the old library to begin cataloging boxes of forgotten books and papers. Dust swirled in beams of light as they pushed open heavy oak doors. The room stretched endlessly, towering shelves, leather-bound tomes, and a long table buried under parchment. Welcome to your family's neglected brain, Celine said dryly, grabbing a rag. They worked in companionable silence at first. Elara stretched on tiptoe to reach a high shelf, only to wobble dangerously. Celine's hands caught her waist from behind, steadying her. The contact was brief, but Elara felt it like a brand, heat radiating through her blouse. Careful, Celine murmured against her ear. Wouldn't want you breaking your neck before we uncover the juicy scandals. Elara flushed. I'm fine, she said quickly, though her heart was anything but. By afternoon, they unearthed a small locked chest tucked beneath loose floorboards near the fireplace. Its brass fittings had tarnished green, but Celine pried it open with practiced ease. Inside lay a stack of weathered letters tied in faded ribbon. Elara's fingers trembled as she untied the bundle. The first letter, dated more than a century ago, was written in looping, feminine script. Dearest I. They will never understand what we are, what we feel, but I would burn 1,000 halls to ashes before I let them keep you from me. Elara's skin prickled. She glanced at Celine, who was watching her closely, her expression unreadable. You recognize the handwriting? Elara asked. Celine's lips curved faintly. Maybe. Do you? Elara swallowed hard, unsure why her throat felt tight. It's familiar somehow? Celine leaned closer, close enough that Elara could see the flecks of silver in her gray eyes. The past has ways of repeating itself. Elara's breath caught. Her hand brushed Celine's on the table, neither of them pulled away. Heat licked up her arm, sharper than any dream. Celine smiled, a secret kind of smile, and whispered, "Careful, Elara. Some discoveries can change everything." The air between them hummed, charged. Elara swore if she leaned just an inch closer, their lips would touch. And she wanted it. God, she wanted it. But instead, she cleared her throat, tugging her hand back. "We should keep reading." Celine chuckled low, the sound warm and amused, though her eyes lingered on Elara like she knew exactly what was happening inside her chest. And that night, the dream returned. Celine's kiss chasing her into the dark once more. The storm rolled in at dusk, a low growl of thunder chasing jagged lightning across the sky. By the time Elara and Celine sat down to supper, rain hammered the manor roof like 1,000 fists. Elara tried to focus on the food Arthur had left, but the silence pressed thick between them, broken only by the crackle of fire and the occasional hiss of wind through old windows. Celine broke it first, tearing a piece of bread with elegant fingers. "So," she said casually, "did the house test you again last night?" Elara froze mid-sip of wine. "Test me?" she asked too quickly. Celine's gray eyes glinted with amusement. "Your dreams." Elara shifted uncomfortably. "You make it sound like the place has a personality." "Oh, it does." Celine leaned back, wine glass in hand, her smile slow, secretive. "But don't worry, it seems to like you." Elara tried to laugh, though it came out nervous. "Lucky me." Celine tilted her head, gaze lingering on Elara's mouth. "Yes," she murmured, so softly Elara wasn't sure if she'd meant to hear it. After dinner, the storm knocked out the power. The manor plunged into darkness, save for the fire and the glow of Celine's lantern. "Perfect," Celine muttered. Blackthorn Hall always did prefer drama. Elara huffed a laugh, hugging her arms against a sudden chill. "It's like the house is auditioning for a ghost story." Celine raised the lantern, the light carving gold across her cheekbones. "Ghosts would be jealous of this place." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were something else, intense, searching. Elara looked away quickly, heart drumming. They set about lighting candles in the parlor. Shadows danced along the walls, bending and shifting like figures half-formed. Elara followed Celine, struck again by the uncanny grace of her movements, as though she belonged to the house as much as the stones and wood. At one point, their hands brushed while they reached for the same candle. Elara flinched, not from discomfort but from the sharp electric jolt that shot through her veins. Celine noticed. Her mouth curved faintly, but she said nothing. Instead, she lit the wick, the glow casting her features in soft gold. "Better?" she asked, her voice low, smoky. Elara nodded, though she couldn't seem to breathe. The rain intensified, battering the windows, shaking the shutters. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed open. Elara startled. "What was that?" Celine's expression darkened, lantern lifting higher. "The house settling." A pause. Or not. Together they climbed the creaking staircase. The corridor stretched long, lined with portraits whose painted eyes seemed alive in the flickering light. Elara swore she heard whispers, a hiss just beyond hearing, words slipping through cracks in time. Celine stopped before the last door on the left, her body taut with quiet alertness. She pushed it open. The room inside was empty, though the curtains flailed violently, the window thrown wide to the storm. Celine shut it with a grunt. Rain had soaked the floor, darkening the wood. "Strange," she murmured. Elara rubbed her arms, shivering. "Do you think someone's in the house?" Celine turned then, stepping close. too close. Her hand lifted, brushing damp hair from Elara's face with a tenderness that caught her off guard. "If there were," Celine said softly, "I wouldn't let them touch you." Elara's breath hitched. The air between them pulsed with heat, with something old and unnameable. She wanted God. She wanted to lean forward, to taste the lips she had already kissed in dreams. Instead, she whispered, "Why do I feel like I know you?" Celine's eyes softened, but her smile was sad. "Because you do." For one breathless heartbeat, the world stilled. Celine's thumb grazed Elara's cheekbone, lingering. Their lips hovered so close Elara swore she could feel the ghost of a kiss. And then thunder cracked overhead so loud it rattled the glass. Elara flinched back, heart hammering, and Celine's hand fell. The moment slipped away. But that night, when Elara finally lay in bed, the whispers returned, threading through her dreams. Only this time, they formed words. "Don't leave me again." The storm left the estate drenched and heavy, the air thick with damp earth and candle smoke. By morning, Elara felt restless, pulled by an itch beneath her skin that no amount of coffee could soothe. Celine seemed equally wound tight, though she hid it better, her movements crisp. Her voice even as she helped Elara sift through another round of dust-choked boxes in the east wing. It was Elara who found the key. A small rusted thing hidden inside the false bottom of a wooden chest. She lifted it into the light, heart thudding. Celine's eyes caught the gleam. "That," she said quietly, "doesn't belong to the upper floors." The key led them to a door at the far end of the cellar stairs. The descent was steep, stone walls slick with moisture, air cool and musty, shadows pooled thick in the corners. Elara hesitated at the threshold. "Feels like we're not supposed to be down here." Celine's smile was faint, almost grim. "That's exactly why we should." Inside, they found shelves lined with old ledgers, boxes, and, at the center of the room, a table draped with a mold-stained cloth. Beneath it lay a stack of diaries bound in cracked leather. Elara lifted one, wiping dust from the cover. The handwriting inside was elegant, the ink faded but legible. "They will not forgive me for this. My blood binds me to this house, but my heart belongs elsewhere. If they knew her name, they would burn us both." Elara's throat tightened. The words were raw, desperate. She felt the echo of them inside her chest, as though she'd read them before, lived them before. Her vision blurred suddenly, her knees buckling. "Elara." Celine was there in an instant, arms wrapping around her waist, steadying her. Her body was warm, solid, holding her against the spin of the room. I don't know what's happening," Elara whispered. Her voice trembled, and not just from the faintness. "It's like I can feel her. Whoever wrote this, she was in love. Terrified, but in love." Celine's gaze softened. History has a way of bleeding through when it wants to be remembered. Her hand slid gently up Elara's arm, thumb brushing the bare skin just below her sleeve. "And so does love." Elara shivered, caught between fear and something else entirely. Celine's face was close, so close. The lantern light painted her lips in gold, her storm-gray eyes burning with an intensity that made Elara's breath falter. Their foreheads touched, soft at first, then firmer as though pulled by some ancient gravity. Elara closed her eyes, every nerve screaming for more. Celine's hand lifted to cup her cheek, her thumb stroking lightly, reverently. "Tell me you feel it too," Celine whispered. I don't understand," Elara whispered back, but her voice broke on the words. Her body betrayed her, leaning closer, aching. "But yes." Their lips brushed. Just a breath, just the edge of a kiss, heat sparking like lightning in the marrow of Elara's bones. Her heart thundered. And then, bang! A door upstairs slammed hard, the sound echoing down the stone staircase. Elara jerked back, breath ragged. "What was that?" Celine's expression shifted instantly from longing to alertness. She set the lantern down, her hand tightening briefly on Elara's before letting go. "Someone's here," she murmured. The cellar, the diaries, the almost kiss. All of it was forgotten as they hurried up the steps into the waiting dark. But Elara knew one thing for certain. She would dream of that almost kiss tonight, and the next time she wasn't sure she'd stop herself. The manor felt heavier after the bang. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the old timbers set Elara's nerves on edge. They searched room by room, finding nothing. No footprints in the mud, no broken locks, only a scattering of papers. Arthur swore he hadn't left that way. Someone had been there. Someone was looking for the same things they were. By the time Arthur retired for the night, Elara sat curled on the parlor sofa, staring into the fire. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following her every move. But worse, she couldn't shake the ghost of Celine's almost kiss in the cellar, the way her body had burned to lean into it. Celine entered quietly, a glass of wine in hand. She offered it without a word, then sat across from her. The silence between them stretched taut, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Elara blurted, "You know something about all of this, about me." Celine didn't deny it. Her eyes flickered in the firelight, gray turned molten silver. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me." Celine leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Her voice was low, careful. "We've done this before, you and I, lifetime after lifetime, and each time you forget me." Elara's breath caught. "That's insane." "Is it?" Celine's gaze sharpened. "Tell me you don't feel it." "The pull. The dreams. The way your body reacts every time I touch you." Elara's chest heaved. "I don't." But her protest faltered as Celine stood, crossing the space between them in 2 long strides. She crouched before Elara so close their knees brushed. One hand lifted, fingers trailing up Elara's thigh, slow, deliberate, until they rested just above her knee. The touch was light but searing. Elara trembled. "Celine." "Tell me to stop and I will," Celine whispered. Her thumb stroked once against the fabric of Elara's skirt, deliberate, coaxing. Elara couldn't. Her breath came fast, shallow. The dreams, the longing, the hunger that had chased her for years, it all coiled tight in her belly, demanding release. She surged forward, capturing Celine's mouth with hers. The kiss was wild, almost violent with need. Celine groaned softly, pulling Elara into her lap, hands sliding up her back, tangling in her hair. Elara clutched at her shoulders, straddling her, heat pooling between her thighs as their mouths moved with desperate rhythm. Celine broke away only long enough to murmur, "I've waited lifetimes for this," before dragging her lips down Elara's throat. Elara gasped, tilting her head back as Celine's mouth traced hot, open kisses along her collarbone. Every nerve lit up, every touch both familiar and shocking. She wanted more, needed more. They fumbled toward the rug before the fire, shedding layers with frantic hands. Buttons popped, fabric tore. Celine's shirt fell open, pale skin glowing in the firelight. Elara's hands roamed, greedy, memorizing curves she felt she already knew. Celine eased her down onto the rug, pressing against her, lips claiming hers again. Elara arched into her, whimpering as Celine's thigh slipped between hers, pressing firmly. The friction sent sparks shooting through her, hips grinding instinctively. Celine's hands slid beneath her blouse, fingertips tracing up her stomach, circling slowly around one breast before cupping it. Elara cried out, clutching her wrist but not to stop her, only to feel it deeper, firmer. Their mouths met again, hungrier, tongues tangling, breath mingling. Elara writhed as Celine's palm kneaded, thumb brushing her nipple until it peeked beneath the thin fabric. "God," Elara gasped, breaking the kiss, "I don't even know you." Celine's lips curved against her skin. "You've always known me." She pushed the blouse aside, lowering her mouth to Elara's breast. The hot, wet drag of her tongue made Elara moan, her back arching as if offering herself up. Celine suckled gently, then harder, her hand slipping down to grip Elara's hip, holding her against the steady rhythm of her thigh. Elara's hands clawed at the rug, the firelight painting them both in flickering gold. Pleasure coiled sharp and deep, every roll of her hips building pressure. But Celine wasn't done. Her hand trailed lower, over Elara's stomach, pausing just above her waistband. She lifted her head, eyes dark with heat. "May I?" she asked softly. Elara, trembling, nodded. "Please." Celine slipped her hand inside, sliding over silk and heat. Elara gasped, clinging to her shoulders as Celine's fingers found her clit, stroking slow, deliberate circles. The sensation ripped through her like fire. "Celine," Elara moaned, hips jerking helplessly. "Shh," Celine murmured against her ear, her voice low and reverent. "I've got you." Her fingers worked with steady skill, coaxing, teasing, dipping lower, then circling back until Elara was panting, her body trembling on the edge. Celine's lips captured hers again, swallowing her cries as the wave crested. Elara shattered, pleasure bursting through her in hot, dizzying pulses, her body bucking beneath Celine's hand. She clung to her, sobbing into her mouth, the release both overwhelming and grounding. Celine held her through it, fingers stilling, kisses gentling. When Elara collapsed against her chest, panting, Celine stroked her hair tenderly. "See," she whispered, "your body remembers even if your mind does not." Elara wanted to argue, to insist this was madness. But her body still thrummed with recognition, her lips swollen from kisses that felt like centuries. And deep inside, some part of her whispered the same truth Celine had spoken. "I've always known you." Elara woke with the scent of candle wax and old wood wrapped around her. For a moment, she thought she was still in her dream, Celine's hands gliding down her spine, their bodies melting together in the shadows. But then she shifted, and the warmth against her bare side told her this wasn't a dream. Celine was here, real, her breath soft against Elara's collarbone. The night before had been fire, a storm they couldn't hold back. This morning, or whatever strange time it was in the windowless estate chamber, carried a different rhythm. Not a storm, but a tide. Slow, inevitable, endlessly pulling. Celine stirred, half asleep, and her hand moved instinctively across Elara's waist, her thumb tracing lazy circles over the curve of her hip. Elara shivered. "Good morning," Celine whispered, her voice husky. Elara smiled faintly, brushing back Celine's dark hair. "Are we going to pretend we didn't nearly set this room on fire last night?" A soft laugh, the kind that broke tension rather than built it. "We should, but I don't think either of us can." Their lips met again, not with the hunger of the first time, but with the gentleness of rediscovery. Celine kissed Elara like she had centuries to relearn her, like each touch was part of a vow she'd carried across lifetimes. Elara let herself melt into it. The dreams that had haunted her suddenly felt less like curses and more like memories, urging her closer. Celine's hands slid upward, fingers gliding with exquisite patience. She cupped Elara's breast tenderly, her thumb brushing over the sensitive peak in slow, teasing motions that made Elara's breath hitch. No rush, no urgency, just deliberate worship. Elara responded in kind, trailing her hand down Celine's stomach, savoring the smoothness of skin beneath her touch, the slight shiver of muscles reacting. She explored Celine as though she were mapping out constellations, every curve a star in a sky she had once lost and finally found again. The pace between them was unhurried, lips wandering, hands caressing, bodies arching in quiet invitation. Celine took her time kissing the hollow of Elara's throat, the dip of her shoulder, the inside of her wrist, before finally coaxing Elara onto her back. Elara gasped softly as Celine moved lower, trailing a path of warmth across her body, each kiss deliberate, reverent. By the time Celine reached the center of her desire, Elara was trembling, not with desperation this time, but with the overwhelming sweetness of being seen, cherished. Their lovemaking was less about frenzy, but more about immersion. Every sigh, every moan was drawn out, their bodies speaking a language older than words. Elara returned the devotion in kind, guiding Celine with tender hands, exploring her with patience, delighting in every shiver she evoked. When release finally claimed them, it wasn't explosive like before. It was a wave that carried them both, gentle yet unstoppable, leaving them breathless and clinging to each other in the aftermath. Celine rested her forehead against Elara's, whispering, "Every life, Elara, I will find you every time." Tears pricked at Elara's eyes. Not of sadness, but of recognition. For the first time, the dreams didn't feel strange or frightening. They felt whole. Wrapped together skin to skin, the world beyond the estate, the dangers, the shadows, the secrets, could wait. For now, it was only them. The world outside their bodies intruded far too soon. Elara woke again, this time not to the warmth of Celine's touch, but to a sound, faint, deliberate, a creak on the floorboards somewhere beyond their chamber door. Her body went rigid. She shifted slightly, brushing Celine's arm. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Celine's eyes opened instantly, sharp and alert. She listened. Another creak. Slow, heavy, like someone moving carefully in the dark. Celine rose without a word, pulling on her shirt, the muscles of her back taut with tension. Elara's heart pounded, heat from their lovemaking still lingering on her skin, colliding with the icy fear settling in her chest. "Stay here," Celine murmured. "The hell I will," Elara whispered back, scrambling to dress as well. Her voice was shaking, but her defiance was steady. "You're not leaving me behind." A shadow passed beneath the gap of the door. Both women froze. Then, silence. Celine pressed a finger to her lips and eased the door open, her body shielded against the frame. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit by the moonlight seeping through cracked windows. Empty. But the silence felt wrong, too thick, too expectant. They moved together, Elara's hand brushing Celine's as if tethered by invisible thread, down the hallway, toward the staircase. Every step seemed to echo louder than it should have. Halfway down the corridor, a sudden crash split the air, glass shattering somewhere below. Elara jumped, grabbing Celine's arm. Celine steadied her, pulling her close, her breath hot against her ear. "Someone's in the house." Her words weren't panicked, they were absolute. They descended slowly, following the cold draft that carried up from the grand hall. The shards of a broken vase glittered across the marble floor like scattered jewels. And there, on the far wall, a message scrawled in black across the faded wallpaper. Fresh, wet. "Leave the past buried." Elara's stomach dropped. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Whoever was here, whoever wanted the estate's secrets hidden, they weren't bluffing. Celine's hand tightened around hers. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Elara knew. What they had just shared made them a target. Whoever had been haunting these walls would not forgive them digging deeper. But it was too late. Elara couldn't stop now, not with Celine beside her, not with the truth clawing so close to the surface. The night air shifted suddenly, the sound of a door slamming somewhere above. Whoever had written the warning was still here. Celine pulled Elara flush against her, voice low and urgent. "Stay behind me." Elara pressed her forehead briefly to Celine's shoulder, fear and desire tangling in a rush. "Not a chance," she whispered back. Together, they turned toward the sound, deeper into the estate's labyrinth of shadows. The estate felt colder after the message scrawled across the wall. Every corridor seemed to whisper, every portrait to glare. Elara tried to shake it, but the words burned behind her eyes. "Leave the past buried." When Arthur summoned them to the study, she half expected him to accuse her outright. Instead, he poured brandy into crystal glasses, his hands shaking as he pushed one toward her. "You've gone too far," he muttered. Celine stiffened beside her. "She deserves to know." Arthur's gaze snapped to his daughter, filled with something darker than anger, desperation. "Do you think I don't know what you are?" What you've done? I was raised to watch you, to keep you tethered to this house, so you wouldn't. His voice cracked. Ruin another life. Elara's stomach knotted. Ruin? Arthur's eyes flicked to her. My family has served yours for centuries. We've seen it happen again and again. You two, always drawn together. And every time it ends in disaster, death, betrayal, blood on these floors. Elara's pulse roared in her ears. You knew? All this time you knew? I tried to stop it, Arthur rasped. I tried to keep you apart. Celine's jaw clenched, fury radiating from her. You call it ruin, I call it love. It destroyed Elara's ancestors, Arthur snapped. It destroyed you. The words hung heavy, jagged, unbearable. Elara couldn't breathe. The firelight flickered between them, and she saw it clearly now. Arthur wasn't just afraid for her, he was afraid of Celine. Of what she meant. Of what she awakened. Without another word, Celine grabbed Elara's hand, pulling her out of the room before the weight of Arthur's stare could crush them both. They didn't stop until they reached Elara's chamber, slamming the door behind them. Celine paced like a caged animal, fury rippling through her every step. He thinks loving me is a curse, she spat. He thinks you are better off without me. Do you believe that? Elara crossed the room, caught Celine's face in her hands. No, she whispered, fierce. I believe I've been waiting my whole life for you. Their mouths collided, not tender this time, but wild, furious, claiming. Elara shoved Celine against the door, hands roaming her body with reckless need. Celine growled into the kiss, her fingers tangling in Elara's hair as she pulled her closer, closer, until their bodies crushed together. Elara felt the hard press of Celine's thigh between hers, grinding against it, desperate to drown out Arthur's words in the only way she knew how. Clothes fell away in frantic motions, tossed aside without care. Elara's blouse ripped at the seam, Celine's nails scraping along her ribs as if to brand her with touch. Every lifetime they've tried to tear us apart, Celine panted, dragging her lips down Elara's throat. I won't let them this time. Not now. Not ever. Elara gasped, head thrown back as Celine bit gently at her collarbone, then soothed it with her tongue. Her hands slid down Celine's sides, clutching at her hips, guiding her closer until their bare skin met, slick and hot. They sank to the bed, Elara straddling Celine, grinding against her as the fire inside them built. Celine's hands were everywhere, cupping her breasts, stroking her thighs, sliding down her spine with aching reverence even through the frenzy. Elara rocked against her, their bodies slick with sweat, the friction maddening. She bent to kiss Celine hard, swallowing her moans, her own cries breaking free as pleasure spiked through her. Celine rolled them suddenly, pinning Elara beneath her, their bodies locking together in a rhythm older than memory. She pressed into her, one hand sliding between them, fingers stroking, coaxing, demanding. Elara arched, her body convulsing as the climax ripped through her, not just pleasure, but fury, defiance, devotion, all tangled together. She cried out Celine's name, clutching her so tightly her nails left crescents in her skin. Celine followed, shuddering, her forehead pressed to Elara's, whispering hoarse promises against her lips. When it was over, they lay tangled in sheets and sweat, the echoes of Arthur's words still circling them. But Elara knew one truth, clearer than any secret scrawled in diaries or hidden in cellars. This love was not ruin. It was survival. The storm outside had swelled into a roar, wind rattling the shutters as though the estate itself braced for what was coming. Elara and Celine crept down the grand staircase, candlelight flickering across their faces. The warning Arthur had tried to give, the centuries of silence, the message scrawled on the walls, it all pressed in around them. And then they saw him. A man stood in the middle of the hall, dripping rainwater onto the marble. His face was unmistakable, a cousin Elara barely knew, a distant relative who had always lingered at family gatherings like a shadow. Finally, he said, voice thick with disdain, you couldn't leave well enough alone. Elara's pulse hammered. You wrote the warning? You think you're uncovering romance and destiny, he spat, but all you're doing is digging up shame. Your ancestor's obsession with her, his glare seared Celine, nearly ruined us all. The estate, the family name. And you're just like her, weak, corrupted. Celine's body tensed beside Elara, protective, dangerous. Say another word against her, she growled, and I swear. The cousin pulled a knife from his coat. This ends tonight, the same way it should have ended generations ago. The air froze. Elara's chest tightened, but instead of retreating, she stepped closer to Celine, fingers tangling with hers. Their grip was fierce, grounding. Celine's thumb brushed over Elara's knuckles. A silent vow, a spark of intimacy amidst the terror. You won't touch her, Elara said, voice trembling but defiant. Not this time, not ever again. The man lunged. They stumbled back into the hall, candles snuffed by the draft as the struggle careened into darkness. The knife glinted, too close. Celine shoved Elara aside, the blade grazing her own arm, blood blooming dark against her sleeve. Celine, Elara cried, catching her, holding her steady. Celine grit her teeth, forcing a grin even through pain. Don't look at him. Look at me. Her hand cupped Elara's cheek, smearing blood on her skin, but her touch was achingly tender. Even now, even here. The cousin charged again, but Celine pivoted, slamming him into the wall. The knife clattered across the floor. Elara scrambled, grabbing it first, her breath ragged. She pointed it at him, hands shaking. You've haunted us long enough, no more. For a moment silence hung, only the sound of the storm, their heaving breaths, and Celine's warm palm pressed against the small of Elara's back. Even with danger still in the room, she pulled Elara close, lips brushing the edge of her ear. I've got you, she whispered. The intimacy was a knife of its own, sharper than fear. Elara trembled, not just with terror, but with the raw, dizzying force of love. She turned, kissed Celine hard, a kiss of defiance, of survival, of claiming the present in the face of centuries of loss. Their mouths moved desperately, clashing teeth, breath mingling as though this could be their last chance. The cousin snarled, staggering to his feet, but Celine broke the kiss just enough to murmur against Elara's lips. Together. They faced him as one, knife steady in Elara's hand, Celine's body shielding hers even with blood on her arm. The storm howled louder, the walls seemed to close in, and Elara knew. The final truth lay in the cellar, where it had all begun, and where it would end. Hand in hand, they forced the intruder down into the shadows. The cellar air was damp, thick with mold and the metallic tang of rusted chains. Their candle cast long, twitching shadows across the stone walls as Elara and Celine forced the intruder down the steps. Arthur was waiting. He stood at the far end, pale in the candlelight, his hands clasped too tightly to be calm. Elara, I told you not to look too deep. Her stomach dropped. It was you. Arthur sighed, eyes hollow. I tried to protect you from the truth, from her. From all of this, our bloodline was already poisoned once. I couldn't let it happen again. His gaze cut to Celine with contempt. You've let history repeat. Celine stiffened, arm brushing against Elara's protectively. You knew about the diary, Elara whispered. You knew what they did to them, our ancestor and her lover. You covered it up. I preserved our name, Arthur snapped, voice echoing off stone. Do you think you're the first foolish girl to fall prey to temptation here? And no matter how much we try to separate you, you both keep reincarnating and finding yourselves, and it always ends in ruin. The intruder spat blood onto the floor, sneering. She's weak, just like the others. Finish it, Arthur, or I will. For a moment, time fractured. The knife trembled in Elara's grip. Her heart thundered. Celine's hand slid over hers, steady, sure. You're wrong, Elara said, her voice breaking but unshaken. This love isn't the curse, your fear is. The cousin lunged again. It was chaos. A scuffle of bodies, grunts, the knife flashing dangerously. Arthur shouted something, but Celine intercepted the cousin, slamming him against the cellar wall. The blade skittered across the floor, landing by Elara's feet. She bent, scooped it up, and this time, her hand was steady. The cousin charged once more, but Elara thrust the knife forward, not into flesh, but into the wooden beam, just beside his head. The point stuck deep, quivering. "Enough!" she roared. The cellar went silent, except for their ragged breaths and the storm above. Arthur stared at her, devastated, but said nothing. The cousin cursed under his breath, retreating into the shadows. Elara's knees nearly gave out, but Celine caught her, arms wrapping tight around her body. Elara clung back, chest heaving against Celine's. And in that moment, in the wreckage of fear and betrayal, there was only them. They stumbled back into the master bedroom, soaked from the rain that had followed them, clothes clinging to their bodies. Celine's injured arm bled sluggishly, but she only smirked when Elara fussed over her, hands trembling. "You almost died for me," Elara whispered. Celine cupped her chin, thumb stroking her cheek. "I'd do it again. Every time." The confession broke something loose inside Elara. Fear, grief, longing, and what replaced it was hunger. She kissed Celine with the force of survival itself, pressing her against the wall. Their mouths collided, hot and desperate, teeth and tongue clashing until Celine moaned into her lips. Clothes came off clumsily, urgently, as though they had no time left. Elara's fingers slid over Celine's slick skin, tracing muscle, scars, the delicate curve of her waist. Celine hissed when Elara's lips trailed down her throat, suckling at the hollow just above her collarbone. They fell back onto the bed, sheets tangling beneath them. Celine pushed Elara onto her back, straddling her hips, hair falling like a dark curtain around their flushed faces. "Do you know how long I've wanted this?" Celine whispered, voice raw. Elara's hands gripped her thighs, nails digging in. "Show me." Celine's mouth traveled down her chest, sucking at her breasts, tongue circling each nipple until Elara gasped, arching up. She slid lower, kisses and nips marking a path down her belly, until her tongue found heat, wetness, need between her thighs. Elara cried out, fists clutching the sheets, every flick and swirl of her tongue unraveling her. But it wasn't just hunger this time. Celine slowed, savoring, teasing, her hands smoothed over Elara's trembling thighs, anchoring her. Her tongue moved with patience, reverence as though worshipping. Elara's cries softened into whimpers, her body opening, her heart pounding with more than just lust. She pulled Celine back up, kissing her feverishly, tasting herself on Celine's lips. Then she rolled them over, taking control. She kissed Celine's scars, her wounded arm, her chest, each touch tender, devoted. Her mouth slid down Celine's body, tasting her, making her moan, until Celine's hand tangled in her hair, body shuddering. They came undone in each other's arms, not once, but over and over, tangled in sheets and sweat, collapsing into soft laughter and whispered confessions between waves of pleasure. By the time dawn crept through the curtains, their bodies were sore, spent, but their hands never let go. Elara pressed her forehead to Celine's, whispering, "The legacy ends here. No more fear, only us." Celine smiled, tired and radiant. "Only us." And with the storm finally quiet, the estate felt alive again, not haunted but reborn, echoing with the promise of a love too strong to ever be buried. Hey Sapphic fam, did you know we now have our very own community space right here on YouTube? And it's officially live! It's where we drop polls, behind-the-scenes updates, and spark juicy conversations about all the stories you love. Don't just watch. Join the conversation, vote, connect with us, and make your voice part of the story.
Love powerful and compelling Sapphic stories? Don't forget to like, comment, follow, share, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell for more heartfelt, romantic, and empowering tales. Your next favorite love story is just a click away.